Hey Mustangs, this is going to be a quick introduction to the water cycle. Now with the water cycle, it's going to be very simplified, just like the carbon cycle. And we're going to take a look at the beginning part of our handout 2 that you received in class. So you got this handout right here. We're going to take a look at the first part first, go over that real quick, and then we'll go ahead and get started with the water cycle. Alright, so quick introduction here. The first 5 questions on this handout, if we go ahead and take a look at those, it says create a 4 trophic level food chain out of any 4 organisms. Okay, so if you create a 4 trophic level food chain, you should have 4 organisms total, and you should always start, of course, with your producer, your autotroph, at the very beginning of your food chain. Number 2, based on what you've learned and your food chain above, describe how energy moves through an ecosystem. So if you remember the PowerPoint from last class, and one thing that should stick in your head, whether you like one direction or not, is the fact that energy moves in one direction through an ecosystem. It's not recycled, so it goes from the sun to the autotrophs, which capture the energy and create a glucose molecule to trap the sun's energy, and then it goes to finally the heterotrophs, which pass it along through the food chain as they get eaten by other organisms. So that's for number 2 there. Number 3, take a look at the pictures below and on the back that represent the water and carbon cycles. Then look at the food chain you created for number 1. Predict how the flow of matter is going to be different than the flow of energy. Okay, well, we just said energy flows in one direction, and one thing you should notice about these pictures here, it's continuous cycle. Okay, so the difference between the flow of energy and the flow of matter through an ecosystem is going to be the fact that matter is going to be recycled. So when we talk about matter being recycled, take a look at this water bottle here, because we're going to look at the water cycle, carbon cycle, and nitrogen cycle in our class, is the fact that matter isn't going to be used up. It's going to be recycled. So this water here, this bottle of water, contains water molecules that have been on our planet for a very, very long time. That means when you drink this water, you could be drinking a water molecule that a dinosaur once drank. You could be drinking a water molecule that Julius Caesar once drank. So the fact of the matter is the fact that matter is going to be recycled. So you could be drinking something that was once part of another living thing. Now don't worry about being grossed out by this because it basically gets cleaned as it goes through the cycle. So a lot of people, oh, I know how it got out of the body. Yeah, that's true. There's several different ways that water could leave the body. But in any case, it's going to get cleaned as it moves through this cycle that you see right here. So as it goes through the water cycle, it's going to get cleaned. Oh, I was going the wrong way. It's going to get cleaned as it goes through the water cycle. All right. Question number 3. Take a look, number 4. What is the difference between biotic and abiotic resources? Well, biotic is living, abiotic is non-living. And what we're going to find out about matter is sometimes it is present inside of a living thing, a biotic thing, and at other times it's going to be present inside of an abiotic thing or contained in an abiotic thing. So we're going to see that it's going to move back and forth between those things. And another important thing is that we have to realize is that we are actually made out of recycled materials. Many parts of your body were probably once part of another living thing at one point. Now, saying you're basically we were recycled materials doesn't mean I'm saying that you're trash. I'm just saying that the matter, the carbon, the nitrogen, the water that makes our body was probably once part of another living thing at some point. All right, number 5. What type of heterotroph has the most important role in the process of recycling matter? So if you think about, there's 5 different types of heterotrophs that we talked about, and there's one that's going to recycle the matter, that's going to help recycle the matter. So when a living thing dies, when a biotic thing dies, these things are going to help remove or free up the matter that is trapped inside of a dead organism. And the one that you should be thinking about is decomposers. All right, so decomposers are actually going to break apart dead things to free up the matter that is trapped inside of them, so that way they could become part of the cycle again. So the water gets released, carbon gets released, nitrogen gets released, so that way it could become part of the cycles once more. All right, now, and here's some pictures of bacteria. So bacteria is one of our primary decomposers, and we also have fungus. That is another one of our decomposers. Alright, so let's go ahead and take a look at the water cycle now. And when we're looking at the water cycle, we're going to start, again, this is really simplified version of the water cycle. There's a lot more that we can add to it, but this is just a simplified version. So we start with number 1 here on our paper was precipitation. So the release of water from clouds. It could be in the form of rain, hail, snow, but release of water from clouds. From there, we have runoff. Water hits the ground and it's going to go into puddles of water, lakes, rivers, streams, oceans. And from there, it can also go seep into the ground to become part of an aquifer, so an underground water source. On the surface here, when water is heated by the sun, it causes the water molecules to change phase, so they go from a liquid to a gas, and it evaporates up into the atmosphere. Now trees go through something very similar that we do when we get hot. To cool their leaves down, to cool them down, they go through a process called transpiration. Right? Transpiration is a release of small amounts of water onto the leaves. And sometimes if you've ever felt this actually during summer, or even not during summer, sometimes you could feel this, where you're walking underneath the tree and you feel like a drop of water and you're like, what the heck was that? That is, you're experiencing transpiration right there. So small amounts of water gathering on the leaf, they might drop off the tip there, and when it hits your skin, you look down, you don't see anything right away, but it's transpiration. So the trees are going to release small amounts of water, and it's basically evaporation from the trees, but we call it transpiration because it's coming from trees. Now, all those water molecules in the form of a gas start to collect up in the atmosphere. They start to stick to one another. They start to stick to dust and debris in the atmosphere, and that is called condensation. So it actually forms the clouds, and when a cloud gets heavy enough in the right conditions, it's going to release that water down to the earth, and then you start with precipitation again. So you went all the way through from precipitation, runoff, evaporation, transpiration, condensation. Now there's also living things that are part of the water cycle as well, because here we're just seeing many of the abiotic factors, abiotic places that you can find water, but living things are going to come along, drink the water, and make them part of themselves too. And then our decomposers will come along, of course, and when our decomposers come along, when these individuals die or perspire or urinate, it's going to release that water and again become part of the water cycle again. So it's all one big connected cycle from the abiotic to the biotic parts. Alright, so on your handout and on your objectives at home, you should notice that it says to do your hand signals, practice your hand signals for the water cycle. So what we're going to do is we're actually going to take a look at hand signal for precipitation, runoff, evaporation, transpiration, and condensation. Okay, so what we're going to do is, and I know it seems silly, but seriously, it helps. I've had students come back at the end of you know, senior year, getting ready to graduate, and they're, oh, hey, Miss Palma, I remember the hand signals from the water cycle. Remember when we did that? I'm like, yeah, I remember. You see students doing it during the test. You might see someone, they're all doing little hand signals here, but it's really going to help you remember the steps of the water cycle. So to start, number 1 here, precipitation, where we're starting off with the water cycle. So for precipitation, we're going like this. So precipitation, that's precipitation. Runoff, we'll go like this. Evaporation, so turning from a gas, from a liquid to a gas up in the atmosphere. Transpiration, I think of from a tree, so I picture like the top of a pine tree, so transpiration. And then finally condensation, so all the water molecules coming together with the dust and debris to form the clouds, and then you start over again. So one more time, it goes precipitation, runoff, evaporation, transpiration, condensation, and then all over again. Okay, so those are our steps of the water cycle. Take a look, watch the video again if you need to, and definitely practice your hand signals. So have a good one, and I will see you in class.